Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're hailing from. Welcome to another episode of Red Hat Enterprise Linux Presents. Today we're talking about expanded RHEL coverage in the developer program, which is kind of a hot topic right now. So, Mr. McBrien, this is your show. You brought on a special guest. Please share with us what we're doing here. You're muted too, by the way.
Well, let me fix that, first of all.
Yeah, there you
I
go.
do have a special guest today, Mr. Brian Gallagher, who's the Principal Product Manager for Red Hat Enterprise Linux Developer Experience. Brian, welcome. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what it is you do and
Sure.
experience here? I
work for the Red Hat Enterprise Linux business unit, and as you said, my title is Experience Product Manager, and what that means is I look at things from the customer perspective and try to ensure that RHEL customers have a good experience. My focus is developers, and that includes working with the developer subscriptions, working with the developer program, as well as providing developer content within RHEL itself. So I work with the engineering teams that develop the runtime languages, the compilers, the databases, the web servers, and do the planning for all the releases, and then assist marketing when we make the new content available. So anything that's kind of related to a developer is something that I'm involved with.
Yeah, and our very first episode of the show was with Gunnar. And one of the topics that we did for our technical demo was working with application streams. And that is your jam as well.
Right. Application streams is the method we use to deliver developer content within RHEL. So we make different versions of all the compilers, runtime languages, and databases available so that developers can select the most appropriate one for their particular application. So if it's an application that has a very long life, full 10 years of RHEL, you want to use a different version maybe of a database or a runtime language than if you're developing a new application that has a very short life and you want to use the latest and take advantage of all the latest features. So application streams is how we make the different versions of content available.
But today, we talked a little bit earlier in the week. We wanted to talk about the expanded RHEL coverage in the developer subscription. So last week, there was a blog announcement that came out. And let me preface this discussion by saying that if you go out to the developer frequently asked questions currently, or you take a look at the Red Hat end user license agreement at this point, you won't see a lot of the things that we talked about in that blog post, right? So the blog post was our intention for this program, and we're still working through a lot of the stuff on the back end. Like the blog post talked about entitling 16 systems. And so what does that mean? What type of system? And our intention is that you can use any type of physical or virtual node, but we have to get that through legal, and what's the legal description look like, and then update the license agreement and update all of the documentation. So before we start this discussion, I just want to remind everyone that until those public-facing documents have been updated, that what we're talking about here is our intent and where we would like to see this go. Until those are updated, it's not really real, right? It'll be really real when we have all the programmatic stuff completed and through Red Hat Corporate. So
right, that's correct. And as we said in the announcement, February 1st is our target date for having all this complete, and we're still driving towards February 1st to have all the T's and C's ready to go for the developer agreement and developer subscriptions.
Awesome. So with that in mind, Brian, what was announced last week in this blog announcement?
Okay, so we announced two things. First, we have a Red Hat developer program that's easily reachable through developers.redhat.com. That's our developer website. If you go there, click on Linux, you'll get all the information to join our developer program. We have that program available to encourage developers, whether you work individually, whether you work as part of an organization, whether you're a student, however, whatever your reason for wanting to learn about Linux and develop applications is, we make a developer subscription available so you can learn how to use RHEL and to assist you as you develop your RHEL-based applications. So that's available on developers.redhat.com. It's been there for, I think, almost 5 years now. So we've had it available. Now, we announced last week some major changes to that program. Up until this point, the free RHEL subscription that's available as part of the program was restricted to development use cases only. And we're actually extending that now so that a developer who joins a developer program and uses the free subscription can not only use it for developing on his or her laptop or virtual machine, but can actually do integration testing and then actually go to a small deployment of up to 16 physical or virtual nodes. And the reason we're doing that is to encourage developers to develop on RHEL, to stay on RHEL, and to start using RHEL with their as they go into production. So we like to talk about the next Facebook. Somebody in their dorm room is developing the next new social media application. We don't want them to have to stop after they build the app before they start deploying it. So we support developers as they go into their testing and through their initial production. Then when they scale beyond 16 instances, at that point, support becomes important, and they really should look at the various RHEL subscriptions we have that provide various levels of support. So that's the change in the developer program. We're extending it beyond just an initial system for doing development to up to 16 instances that allow developers to develop, test, do their integration, and then go into their initial production testing.
So just to recap, prior to the change being announced, I think we were limited to one dual socket system, and then you could run some virtual machines that were entitled RHEL guests on that one system. And now what we're saying is you'll get 16 entitlements to use, and you can choose any combination of physical or virtual systems to deploy those 16 entitlements on.
That's correct. It's 16 physical or virtual nodes. It's not tied in any way to a particular CPU size or number of cores. It's open and available for any physical or virtual node up to 16. Right?
And that's a little bit different than commercial RHEL entitlements as well, because in paid for RHEL subscriptions, you're counted every subscription for each dual socket pair, or each socket pair, I guess, not dual socket pair. So if you had an 8-socket system, that would take 4 RHEL entitlements to get entitled. And what we're saying in developer subscription is that same 8-socket system in developer subscription would take 1 entitlement to get entitled.
Right. We sell RHEL in different ways for different size systems and different use cases, whether they be for a large number of virtual machines or smaller machines or big, powerful machines. But what we wanted to do with the developer program is just make it as easy as possible. We don't want a developer to have to worry about the number of sockets in their machine, or worry about how they're deploying virtual machines. Because we know developers, no matter what their platform is, whether they're developing natively on physical hardware, installing RHEL, or whether they're running in a virtual machine on a Mac or Windows or on a larger system, we don't want them to have to worry about counting sockets and counting VMs and dealing with Red Hat entitlements. The whole point is to make it easy. You download the subscription, and then you install, and simple registration, and you're up and running. You're just limited to 16, right? It's also important to mention that our developer subscriptions are for individual developers. They are not for companies or corporations. Individual developer. Now, that developer could be in a corporation. You could be a developer that works for a very big company, and you just want to learn RHEL at home in the evening, on the weekends. That's perfectly fine. That's perfectly legitimate. But this subscription is not for a corporation. The second part of the announcement that we made last week is, and that's what we call the Developer for Teams subscription. This is a little different in its terms and conditions. It's still restricted to developers only, and still has the various socket and virtual machine limitations that RHEL has. But it's essentially a tiered offering. By that, I mean that a organization, a large company, has access to up to 25,000 entitlements, 25,000 physical or virtual nodes that can run in their organization at no charge, at no cost. And then we offer support, either 2-day support or 4-hour support, depending on how critical it is to the organization. And those are layered on top of the team subscription. And that subscription is available for an organization, an enterprise, a big company. And it's only available through the Red Hat sales motion. So you should contact your Red Hat sales representative to obtain that subscription. And because no two organizations are the same, some are big, some are small, some have business units, some are divided in different ways, some have developer organizations, some have many developer organizations. The Red Hat sales team will work with you to properly size it and configure it so that it makes sense for your organization. Again, you get systems for development at no cost. You can add support to it, and you get access to everything that's available in our developer program. And that includes all the blogs, all the articles, all the help guides, videos, everything we make available as part of the developer program. And there's quite a bit. We've been doing it for 5 years. We accumulated quite a bit. We have lots of helpful articles on developing C, C++ applications, or using the runtime languages, or picking the latest version of Python. That's one of our most popular articles, right? Is selecting the right version of Python for your project, depending on whether you're migrating from an older version of a legacy app or developing a newer app. So those are the two things we announced: the individual and the team subscriptions.
I just wanted to get a clarification real quick. So for the individual developer subscription, we said you can use it for development, testing, QA, and even production, but it's all self-support.
Correct.
For developer for teams, are they also allowed to use across their organization in any environment, or is it limited to just dev or just dev and QA?
It's limited to dev and test.
Okay.
Right. Now we have other subscriptions and different support offerings that can take you all the way through, if it's CI/CD pipeline, we can take you all the way from the initial developer writing the code right up to pushing into production. But you just can't do it with this subscription. The account team will put a nice set of subscriptions together to, based on your organization.
Great.
Like I said, every organization is different. It's hard to say, okay, here's this one subscription that works with, a service provider, an auto manufacturer, a financial institution. Everybody's different. So we think we have a good flexible solution that can be tailored to anybody's developer environment.
Awesome. Short, I saw that we were getting some traffic in chat. Should we take a quick break and answer some questions?
I've got it covered, to be honest with
Oh,
you.
okay.
So there is one question about getting RHEL on DigitalOcean and Linode. I mean, I don't know how that whole process works, but I'm pretty sure DigitalOcean and Linode have to ask us, or we have to ask them to put RHEL as an available OS on their clouds.
It depends.
Right.
So if they allow you to make your own instances, you could make your own instances and entitle them with subscriptions from Red Hat. We call that bring your own subscription, or BYOS. And we do that today with, like, you can make an Amazon AMI using something like Image Builder or Amazon tools and entitle it using your regular Red Hat subscriptions. If you're talking about putting it in the marketplace at those cloud providers, we have a partnership program for cloud providers called the Certified Cloud Provider. What's CCSP? Certified Cloud Service Provider. CCSP program. And so DigitalOcean or Linode would have to be members of that program in order to get, essentially they build their image. There's some testing tools that Red Hat provides to just make sure that it looks sane, and then they can offer it for sale in the marketplace. So depending on which way you want to go, BYOS, you can do it today using your Red Hat subscriptions. Marketplace, the cloud provider needs to participate in this Certified Cloud Service Provider program that Red Hat offers.
Right. Cool. That, I think, is the only question that I can't answer.
So then,
there's
Brian,
well, I will point out there's no subscription fee for developers.redhat.com, right? Like, you get that account for free.
Right.
That's it, right? Like,
yes, you get it for free, but it is for an individual.
Right.
And the individual signs or agrees to the terms and conditions and is therefore responsible. So, yeah, individual based.
Right.
So Brian, a couple of years ago, I was talking with a coworker at Red Hat, and we were talking about CentOS usage. And he was telling me that he uses CentOS for his wife's business mail server. And I said, well, what about something like developer program? And he said, oh no, developer program says it has to be for in development. And this is my wife's business mail server. So technically it's production. Would that use case now be covered under the expanded developer program?
Yes, it would. Yes, it would. And the reason we include things like mail servers and initial production is because it's very hard for a developer, an individual, a small team. We use the expression "two guys and a dog in a basement," right? That's starting developing their application, starting their business. We don't want that type of organization to have to worry about, oh gee, is this a production case? Is my mail server production and my development, the runtime languages and the VM for testing, is that covered or whatever? We just want it to be very, very simple. Up to 16 instances, go for it. It's yours.
Great. And then, the intention is that at some point, those same two guys and a dog in a basement gets to the point where they're now no longer two guys, a dog in a basement, right? It's like a 8-person, they have an office, and now as your footprint is growing larger, you can either do continued self-support that you purchase from Red Hat, or you make the decision to buy entitlements from Red Hat that include some level of support so that you don't have to bring all your own expertise every time.
That's right. Yeah, at some point, things get critical. You have a business, you have a lot of people financially relying on things, and you really don't want it to be down because of, for any reason, whether it be security patches or just simple misconfiguration as you scale out your systems or something. So having support and having a Red Hat support team available at that point is very useful. So we want to make it easy at when you reach the point where, okay, we're a little beyond 2 guys and a dog. Now we're 20 guys in an office. We can easily move to supported subscriptions at that point.
And so even though the developer subscriptions come as self-support, do people who use them get additional resources like Red Hat Customer Portal Knowledge Base or Red Hat Insights?
Yes, they do. The developer subscription does come with Insights. It is available if you want to use our satellite server. Obviously, that costs, but you can use those subscriptions with our satellite server to make system management easy. It comes with web console, image builder, a lot of the tools that Red Hat provides for system management. So that's all included in the subscription.
Great. So earlier when I was telling you about my friend who was running his wife's mail server on CentOS, if he got a new developer subscription and decided that he wanted to move that to RHEL, what would be your recommendation for how he would do that?
Okay, well, he would sign up through the developer program, and I'm sure he would find lots of valuable content there. He would also have access to all our documentation, which would allow him to, which would give him, instructions on how to set up the server. He can also ask questions online. Other experts can help him. There's probably enough information there already to do it. So yeah, he has access to our customer portal. He has access to our developer program. There's lots of stuff there to help him do it. And of course, he gets all the updates. He gets all the RHEL updates. So, his mail server will be secure. Yeah.
Right.
So would he have to install a new box and move all of his data over to it, or could he take his existing CentOS box and transform it?
It's up to him. Would he, if he wants to start clean, is perfectly able to do that. We also have CentOS to RHEL conversion software that's available that he can download. So he doesn't have to update any databases or configuration rules or things that he might have available.
Yeah, and Convert to RHEL is offered through the Evil repository. That's the tool that will convert from Cent to RHEL, or other Linux flavors like some of the other downstream builds can be converted as well if you wanted to standardize your environment on RHEL. But so the tool is available through the Evil repo. There's also a knowledge base article that you can download it directly from, that the developers, as they generate new ones, they update it both places. And then you can convert from CentOS Linux 7 to RHEL 7, CentOS Linux 6 to RHEL 6, although that's
why you would
now,
do that at this point.
Yeah. And then there's you can also now convert from CentOS Linux 8 to RHEL 8. And that's all done in place, keeps your configurations in place. It is a fairly smooth transition.
Yeah, I just posted a link to the blog post from last summer talking about Convert to RHEL.
Yeah, and Brian Smith is a technical account manager at Red Hat. In the Red Hat Enterprise Linux YouTube channel, he did a walkthrough of converting CentOS Linux 7 to RHEL 7 as a YouTube video walkthrough.
Cool. I'll try and find that. So there's a question. Do you have to strip everything on top of the OS before you move from CentOS 8 to RHEL 8 before you migrate, or can you just do it with all your applications and fun bits in place as is?
So you should be able to do it in place with all your fun bits in place. So if, for example, your CentOS Linux system was subscribed to the EPEL repository and you had installed a bunch of stuff from EPEL, when you do the convert, it's still going to have the EPEL repo software installed. It's still going to be able to pull the packages from EPEL. So that would all be kind of in place. If you're doing, you built a bunch of stuff from source and did source-based installs, that's a little bit more questionable. It would likely be okay, but that's one where it's like even slight changes and libraries and other stuff can potentially cause problems. But if you're doing packages and it's from repositories, those repositories stay in place, and you'll be able to use them like you did before.
Well, you can't use convert to RHEL to upgrade from like 7 to 8, right? Like you have to do 7 to 7, 8 to 8. You can't go from like 6 to 7. I'm assuming, right?
That's correct. However, we do offer an upgrade path from 7 to 8. So you could do something really crazy, well, not really that crazy, of converting from CentOS Linux 7 to RHEL 7, and then using our application called Leap to go from RHEL 7 to RHEL 8. And that is also an in-place upgrade. That one's a little bit more effort, especially if you're using a bunch of third-party stuff, because you want to make sure your third-party stuff also works on the new version of RHEL. But yeah, that is definitely a method to get you upgraded. Yeah. CentOS Linux conversion to RHEL, and then a RHEL in-place upgrade to another version of RHEL.
As the question asker mentions, he says, I would rather do it fresh anyway, so thank you though. I dropped a link to the blog posts and everything, so yeah. I can't blame anybody for wanting to do a fresh install as opposed to upgrading in place. There's benefits and negatives to both. So yeah, if you don't upgrade in place, you got to bring in your applications. If you upgrade in place,
especially if you're a developer.
Yeah, exactly.
If you're a developer, you find yourself starting fresh often. Yeah.
Cool.
Great. Well, Brian, do you have any additional guidance or directions on anything people should know about the developer sub or the new changes that we're proposing to it?
So the important thing, as you mentioned earlier, Scott, is that it's February 1st is when all this takes effect. I do encourage people, though, right away to go to developers.redhat.com if you're not familiar with the site and take a look. There's a lot of OpenShift content. There's Ansible content. There's middleware content. If you click on Linux across the top of the home page, it will take you right into the developer program, and you can see some of the things that we make available, including the ability to download the developer version of RHEL. And as we said, it will be the old terms up until the 1st, and then the new terms will be available. But take a look. I think there's a lot of valuable content there. So I encourage you to go take a look. And if you're a RHEL customer today, I encourage you to talk to your account team about the team subscription and some of the options that will be available again February 1st and into the spring when we make some more of these new developer offerings available, and then our account team can help you optimize the number of subscriptions that you have and the type of subscriptions that you have to meet your business needs.
Great, thanks, Brian. Awesome. So at this point, I'm going to transition to just kind of doing a walkthrough of registration and what that looks like on the other side. you're welcome to hang out and give me some guidance if you would like to, or if you have other more important things to do, that it's also cool to bounce out if you would like.
Okay, I'll stay around for a bit.
Okay, good to keep me honest.
Yeah.
I lie a lot.
You do not.
All right, so I wanted to first share the developer program registration page. So if you go to developers.redhat.com/register, that'll take you to the registration link. And it's a relatively short form where you define what your Red Hat login is, or if you already have one, you just put it in. And then you fill in some additional details about the registration. And that's it.
Yeah.
So after this, every year, you will need to come back and kind of re-up. And when you re-up, it asks you for your Red Hat account and I believe your email, and that's your re-up. So it's pretty frictionless to get registered and get access to the subscription. Once that's done, it'll show up over in your Red Hat subscription portal. So if you go to access.redhat.com and you log in with that redhat.com credential that you put into the registration form, you'll see the Red Hat developer subscription show up in your subscriptions.
Nice.
So here I actually have a mix of production subscriptions that I've purchased, and then because one of the users in my organization, actually two of the users in my organization have registered for developer subscriptions, that shows up in my subscription list. And if you click into it, it'll give you a little bit more details on what's included in that subscription. And after registration, it's pretty quick to show up in your account. It's I think less than 30 minutes to get it reflected in your access to redhat.com stuff. All right. So once you've clicked on the developer subscription, it'll tell you a little bit about it. So for example, it is a self-support subscription, meaning that you can't call Red Hat or open support cases, but you do get all of the other stuff that comes with a RHEL subscription, like knowledge base, access to the customer portal, subscription watch, insights.
JP Date is asking, is this the same account you would use to download images from registry.redhat.io? And I believe so. I think it's the same one. It can be. It could also be different. Like you could set that up as a different one as well.
So I will warn you that user management for redhat.com is can be challenging. So essentially you can have one instance of a username. And that one instance can either be its own organization and its own subscriptions, or that one instance can belong to a larger organization where that's one of several users that can belong to that other organization. You can request that Red Hat include your credential in an organization. However, let me say this again, however, you can never get it back out of that organization. So if this is your independent user account and you want to keep it independent at some point in the future, then you need to keep it independent at all times and not blend it into an organization. Because the second you blend it in an organization, it can never be unblended out of that organization and made independent again.
Right.
So here, a couple of the users in this organization registered their usernames with the developer subscription. That has now shown up for the organization. And you can see that, well, we talked about the self-support. Down in the entitlement quantity, because I have two of them, that's why it's showing up as 32 subscriptions available. Normally for an independent user, this would be 16. and it says right here, one subscription provides 16. The other is capacity per subscription. So we talked earlier about how the intent is that developers shouldn't be limited by the size of their hardware or the type of their virtual machine that they might be using. It should just be one subscription per one instance or box. And so that's what we're seeing here. There is a capacity limit that's set of 128 sockets per box, but that's just kind of like it is a field that's required for subscriptions.
Right.
An unreasonable number, thinking that no one would get there. So until they do, of course.
Until they do, yeah.
Right. And then if you look at the provided content, and this is the place where I think it's the developer subscription is really interesting. So in order to provide pretty much anything you would want or need as a developer, we pretty much provide everything as part of the developer subscription. The exception to that is satellite, because that requires management, smart management entitlements as well. So it's in addition to a subscription. But so we offer things like the Red Hat Enterprise Linux server, which includes all versions, right? 6, 7, and 8.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also have the update. Well, that's for SAP Server Solutions. I was looking for EUS.
Oh, the extended stuff.
It's in here.
Yeah, it's definitely in there.
It might be chopped because of the short title. Yeah, it looks like that.
That's it.
Yeah.
So Red Hat Enterprise Linux extended update support, so that you can actually tie your system to a specific extended update support release of RHEL. For RHEL 8, that's every even numbered release. So 8.2 is a EUS release, 8.4 is an EUS release. And even though a new version of RHEL 8 has come out, we backport the important and critical security errata into that older dot release that we maintain for up to 2 years.
Nice.
Also, we have things like the high availability product, which is pacemaker and core sync to do your high availability failover and service definitions. What else? Resilient storage is GFS. So that's your clustered storage file system. Scalable file system, this is for RHEL 7 and earlier. That's, I'm sorry, RHEL 6, I think, is the only one that uses that now. That's for XFS support.
Mm.
And RHEL 8 uses XFS natively. So, and then down here for SAP, so if you're an SAP developer, we also offer you RHEL for SAP, which is kind of like extended update support, where you can stay on a specific dot release of RHEL for longer, and it goes beyond the extended update support. But the intention is that you would run SAP on top of that. Because you're running SAP is why you need that longer lifespan of the individual update releases of RHEL.
Right.
So there is no SAP included in this one. It is simply operating system with extended update support so that you could get SAP from SAP and run it on top of it.
Nice.
So yeah, there's a lot of stuff here. The Code Ready Builder, so that's a whole bunch of development tools, the Container Development Kit, Ansible Engine, which is automation, the supported Ansible automation.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, lots and lots of stuff.
Many options.
Yes. All right, so I see that JP Dave has a question.
Oh yes, it's a long one. Do you want me to read it out, or do you?
Yeah, that's cool.
Okay. In RHEL 7, it was easy to find packages. In RHEL 8, you have started to hide breakout package in a bunch of different repos. These are called app streams. What was the rationale in doing it that way? What was easy to find in RHEL 7 is more difficult in RHEL 8, and support is confused where things are. Also, would be nice if there was a way to search repos that are not enabled on the system so you know where to go and what to enable so that you can get packages you need, like a super duper index would work.
So I actually would turn that around and say that in RHEL 8, we drastically simplified the experience for repositories. So in RHEL 7 and earlier, we had RHEL server repository, we had RHEL desktop repository, we had RHEL workstation repository, we had extras repository, we had supplementary repository, and then there was like all the add-ons like HA,
Right.
scalable file system, like all the other stuff. Each one of those had their own separate repository. So in RHEL 8 world, we have 2 repositories for all RHEL systems. We have base OS repository and AppStream repository. And base OS repository provides essentially the minimal operating system for RHEL. And then AppStream repository provides a lot of the add-on stuff, plus all of the actual application stream modular content for RHEL 8. So in order to get an analogous RHEL 8 system compared to RHEL 7, you enable the base OS and the AppStream repositories, and that's it. Everything else is in those 2.
Nice.
Instead of RHEL 7, where it was like RHEL 7 server plus supplementary plus extras. Now, there are still a lot of repositories available for RHEL 8. So, for example, the high availability add-on is a separate repository. The Ansible engine, Ansible 2.9, is a separate repository. So if you want those additional products that sit on top of RHEL, you will likely have to enable additional repositories to get them.
Right.
That said, 2 weeks ago, we had Rich Dorito on, and we talked some about subscription management. And one of the things that we talked about in that show was that you can define activation keys to register your systems. And as part of that activation key, you can identify what repos should be subscribed on that system. So if your standard build was base OS, AppStream, Ansible, and I don't know, HA add-on, in your activation key, you could identify that those are the repositories that the system should be subscribed to. And then whenever you register with that activation key, that system automatically gets configured with those Red Hat repositories. So there are some ways that you can approach that's a little bit different. You may notice that like all the source code repositories and all the, I'm sorry, not the source code, the debug repositories are all separate on RHEL 8, and that might be where some of the there's so many repositories stuff might be coming from.
So I'm trying to get some clarification on what JP Dade means by quote hiding. Like V8 develop, he said V8 develop is hiding. Node.js and DevToolset 10 is not even called that anymore. Oh, you have to go search to find things. Yes, that's to enable an app stream. You kind of have to know which app stream you're enabling, which is kind of a chicken and an egg. I kind of see it from JP Dade's perspective, right? Like, okay, here's all these app stream repos. Which one has my thing?
Okay, so there is one app stream repo. Let me pull up a box here and we can take a look at it. Oops, that's not. So working with application streams, I actually made a live system exercise that you can do with it and kind of get introduced to it.
Cool.
So if you go to lab.redhat.com, it's called Managing Software from an Application Stream. So take a minute to get the box provisioned here.
Right.
But in this walkthrough on a live system, we're going to kind of check out what application streams are available. Then we're going to install one of a specific version. And then we're also going to change it to a newer version because we changed our minds.
Cool. Okay.
Right. And we did this in our very first show in October last year. This was the demonstration that we did with Gunnar as our Was he chief strategist and grand poobah of RHEL or something?
Yeah, I forget his title, to be honest with you. But yes, the RHEL master. Not realm master. Don't be confused by that.
Okay, you dungeon master.
Yeah.
All right, so to set the stage, this box is subscribed to base OS repo and AppStream repo, right? That's the basic stuff that when you register a box, you automatically get on RHEL 8.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a yum module list. And this shows me all of the modules of software that are offered through application streams. So modules of software are groups of packages that are associated with a specific application. And you can see that for Postgres here, we ship 3 different versions currently, 9.6, 10, which is the default, and 12, which became available in RHEL 8.3, I think. And so if you're interested in just a specific module, so maybe I'm only interested in looking at Postgres. Man.
You can type. I believe in you.
Yes, I can. One day. So you tell it the module name that you want, and then instead of getting QL, instead of getting everything that's offered as a module, you only get the one you specified, right? So you can trim that down a little bit to make it easier to look at. All right. So you want to install one. If we just did yum module install Postgres, we'd get Postgres 10 because that's the one that's labeled default. If you don't want Postgres 10, you wanted something like Postgres 9.6, you have to add on the version number. And that's what is happening here in this command, right? So I'm just going to click it to run it. And it's going to enable the 9.6 module and then install the 9.6 version of Postgres, right? So if I look at the list of Postgres app streams available, that one is the one that's enabled. And over here, this I here tells me that that's the version that's been installed in this box. And we can verify that by actually running Postgres -- version, right? 9.6 was what was installed in the box. Okay, so if you wanted to install Postgres 12, same deal, yum module install Postgres QL:12, and you'd get Postgres version 12 installed instead of the default, which is 10. All right, but then maybe you change your mind and you're like, you know what? I was running Postgres 9.6. I now want to run Postgres 10.
Mm-hmm.
So how do I get there? Now, there's some administrative stuff you have to do too, like probably want to make a backup or an export of your Postgres database so that when you get the new version of software installed, you can import all your data back, right? So
Yep.
I'm not covering any of that. I'm just covering the application stream yum module commands to flip-flop it.
Got it.
So you still have to do all of those things. But to change the version of Postgres that you've installed, you first have to remove the one that you've got and then install the one you want. So I'm going to remove PostgreSQL 9.6. All right, so it pulled off all the stuff that it installed. And we could take a look at the list of Postgres modules available. And what you'll see is that 9.6 is still enabled. Right? So if I just did yum module install Postgres, I'd get Postgres 9.6 back. So we're going to disable it. And then I'm going to enable the version I want. Right? I said that I wanted 10. So there we go. And now if I look at the list of available application streams again for Postgres, right, it's the default and it's the one that's enabled. All right, so now I do a yum module install. I'm specifying in the command version 10. If I didn't specify it, that's what I'd get because it's both the default and enabled. But I wanted to just be explicit to be concise. And now if we look at the list, it's there, right? It's the little install over here flag. And then if I show the version, right, that's actually the version that's installed. So AppStream repo from Subscription Manager is where all this stuff is stored. And I would say yum module list is a good way to get a list of what's all available, what versions are available as application streams. So Brian, I know this is your jam. Do you have any clarifying statements you'd like to make or corrections?
Oh, that's a really good description, Scott. Thanks for doing that. Just one comment is that not all application streams are modules, but most of them are. So 99% of what you just did applies, and that's the best starting point. But you will find some other application streams that are not modules.
That's true.
Some questions, some comments. I'm just going to provide like a lot of info to you right now. So the Ryan Cook says this is simple as well as confusing at the same time. So take that piece of feedback for what it's worth. Why can't you use two different versions of the same thing, right? Like,
that is an excellent question.
Right.
So in RHEL 7 world, you could.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but let's think about this for a second. So let's say that I want Postgres 9.6, Postgres 10, and Postgres 12 all installed.
Sure.
Aren't they all going to install a binary called PostgreSQL?
Yeah.
So how do I separate them? And how do I make sure they don't stomp on each other? And when I start up the server, aren't they all going to want the same port by default?
By default, yes.
So there's a lot of stuff, like they all have their own libraries that come along with them that are named the same. Like there's a lot of stuff that conflicts and mashes on each other. And in RHEL 7, we implemented this with a technology called software collections. There was a tremendous amount of work put into making them not mash into each other. But that essentially what we ended up with is a binary called PostgreSQL 9.6, a binary called PostgreSQL 10, a binary called PostgreSQL 12, and then the same thing for like all the libraries and things. And that made it even more confuddling. So in RHEL 8 world, we said, all right, we're gonna change this. And actually, Stephen Gallagher wrote a article for Fedora, a blog called "Modularity is Dead, Long Live Modularity," where he kind of goes into some of these things and how it's changed. So in RHEL 8, we said, okay, we'll offer a bunch of different ones, but you can have one. It's like the Highlander. There can be only one. And if you have a real need to have more than one on the same system, then what I would suggest is pull down something like the Red Hat Universal Base Image.
There you go.
And have several different containers running several different versions of what it is that you want on the box. And that would be a more elegant solution than trying to shoehorn them all into the file system and keep them straight and a bunch of other stuff.
So run them as individual containers as opposed to processes, which a container is a process technically. So that probably is more elegant. Yeah, Norindev just actually posted that as you were saying that. Like, how about using different versions of PostgreSQL in containers with Podman? Yeah, it's if you need that kind of like multi-database on one host kind of deal, I would recommend going that way anyway, because it does give you some more granular controls as well as standardization, right? Because we do have, I believe, UBI Postgres images, don't we?
I believe we do.
I think we do.
There's probably a Redis image as well.
Okay, right, exactly.
And that was exactly our rationale when we did RHEL 8. We had software collections in previous versions of RHEL. We worked around all the issues to install multiple versions, but we got pushback that it was first complicated to do it, and then not all the third-party tools could find the databases where they expected them to be with software collections. So we said with RHEL 8, we have mature container technology at this point. Since 90% of our customers are going to be installing a single database on a system, we'll optimize for that, and then we'll leverage containers for the cases where you do need more than one on a particular system.
Okay, so can we get all this stuff added to a regular UBI 8 repo? We can discuss that on the Level Up Hour next week, maybe, Conan.
So we've been consistently expanding what's available in the UBI 8 repo.
Right.
And we're working on expanding it again for the next release of Red Hat Enterprise Linux. In 8.3, we included a OpenJDK version of UBI. There's continuous improvement and expansion already happening there, I think. And even if there's, I'm sorry, Chris, go ahead.
I was just going to say, remember the UBI packages or images roll with the RHEL, version as well, right? So like UBI 8 is whatever version of 8 is latest, right? So
yeah, and they actually rebuild it every 6 weeks by default.
Right.
And they'll build it sooner than that if there's a critical or important security errata that comes out that affects the packages for UBI 8. And if that's too quick, or you need things that are not provided natively in the UBI 8 repos, you can always use Builda to build your own RHEL 8 based container. So that if you build your own RHEL 8 based container, then you have access to the full realm of RHEL 8 packages.
Right.
The big difference is that UBI 8 was specifically designed to be redistributable. So anything that's in the UBI 8 repos, you can stick your software on top of and give to someone, and it's freely redistributable to them with your stuff in it. If you do your own custom RHEL 8 pack, thanks, Brian. Enjoy your next meeting.
Thank you. Appreciate this opportunity.
Thank you so much.
If you build your own RHEL 8 container image from the RHEL 8 repos, it could be redistributable, but there's some stuff that you have to do through the partner program in order to make that happen. If it's just like native inside your organization, I wouldn't worry about it. Like that's a perfectly valid way to build it and distribute it within your org.
So Conan Kudo points out that Redis is missing from UBI 8 repos. Is that a licensing issue with Redis?
I don't know that
what the issue is there.
So there's another Scott Mick that works for RHEL,
Right.
Scott McCarty, and he's the or product manager that manages container tools and UBI. I've been
ping him real quick.
I've been wanting to have him on the show for a while, but I know he does a lot with the OpenShift shows, so I've been giving him a reprieve.
Oh, how nice of you!
Yes. At some point, I think in the next month or two, I'm going to force him to come. But he's the person that would be the definitive, have the definitive answer for it.
I'll ask him. It might not be answered during the show, but I'll let you know via Discord once I get an answer.
Yeah, and like I said, if you need Redis and you're not trying to redistribute it outside of your organization, like you're not trying to sell it to a customer of your own, but you're just using it within your organization, use Builda, make your own RHEL 8 using the RHEL 8 repos, which certainly does have Redis as an application stream.
Yeah, and that's kind of how I would go anyway, right? Like I wouldn't, like my bespoke environment is bespoke for a reason, so I wouldn't assume in every case that the image directly would just be perfectly fine for me. I would probably want to look at that source file and say, hey, are all these parameters good for my environment? Yes or no? And one or two flags you might need or might need to turn off kind of deal in some cases. So just keep that in mind, right? Like you can take that image, the actual file itself, and build your own thing out of it too.
Yeah, the trick with that one though is while we rebuild UBI every 6 weeks, and to account for all the package changes and updates and other stuff that's happened, if you build your own bespoke RHEL 8, now you get to do that.
Yeah.
So you have to track it and you have to rebuild it periodically to make sure that you get all those updates and changes.
Okay, cool. So someone's trying to create. Oh, this is a Fedora image. So why? Okay, so now the question is, if you're looking at chat, I'm trying to play along here. I'm trying to containerize Pajur, which is a Python-based Git repository with UBI 8, which I would then ask, it's a Fedora project. Why not use a Fedora image?
So
But I understand the reasons for using RHEL too. So yeah, there's all kinds of reasons for that.
So I actually have a lab that is on using already packaged RPMs in containers. And it starts off with UBI 8 and then adds the EPEL repo inside the container image. And then it installs software from EPEL into the container image. So sure, let me just throw you this link real quick. So I will point out that I very much chose the packages that I installed to make sure that they wouldn't have broken dependencies or other things. So I don't know what the dependencies for the application that you're trying to install in a UBI 8 container is. So it may be that if it's too complex or the UBI 8 repos don't provide the prerequisites that you need for the software that you're trying to install as a package, that maybe you should look at building your own. And actually we do that in this. In another scenario that kind of introduces Builda, and the Builda lab does UBI 8 first, and then it has you create your own custom RHEL 8 container after that. So if UBI doesn't provide what you need in its repos, then try building your own custom one off the RHEL 8 repos.
Yeah, and JP Day's talking about GCC and how our data scientists want a newer version of C that is greater than what we have available, right? Like that's where you take the UBI image and hand it to them with the version of C they want. Hopefully that can help them. But if they're not comfortable with, containers, there might be some training opportunity there, for example. So that would be one path.
So I know that we also provide several versions of the GCC toolkit as application streams with RHEL 8. The latest one I want to say is 10 that came with 8.3. So if it's even more newer than that, woof.
Yeah.
That's a hard road to hoe.
Yeah. What's the latest version of GCC? I'm wondering at this point. 10.2. So, and that was released in July.
So let me take a look at what application streams we've got.
Yeah. GCC toolset, not dev toolset. 10.
Yeah, it's
okay.
GCC toolset.
Yeah.
Oh, and it looks like it may not be a module.
Ooh. Okay, that would make some sense.
One second, I'm looking to see what. I'm pulling everything that's got GCC in its title. All right, so GCC toolset 10 is 10.0, and we released it. Well, actually, I take that back. Yes, GCC toolset 10.0. We released it with 8.3 in April.
Yeah. Sounds right. But is it 10.0? Is that what you said?
The GCC toolset 10 RPM provides 10.0.
Okay. So if they need 10.2.
So there's a bunch of library stuff that is GCC toolset 10, and a lot of the library stuff is 10.2.1. So
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Does that help you, JP Dave, at all? I hope so. So you just source that new version like you did in 7, right? That's the question. When you say source, you mean install, I'm assuming.
Yeah, so you do a yub install GCC tools. Actually, you know what? Here, let me share my screen. I'll just.
There you go. Yeah. You show us.
I'll just do it if I can type. All right, so that's what it's called, GCC toolset 10.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's all the stuff that it's pulling in.
So 10.2.1 is what I see. A lot of 10.2.1 stuff.
Yeah, but if you look, that's like the libraries.
Right.
But like the C++ compiler, for example, is 10.2.1. So it's a mix. But yeah, that's pretty much it. And I want to say that this is in the, well, I'm not going to say that because I'm sure I'll be wrong, and then Scott McCarty will yell at me for saying things publicly that aren't true.
Mm-hmm.
I only lie half the time. Fine.
Terrible. Okay, so this goes back to like now the next statement from JP Date is there's system versions and then user space versions of packages in RHEL 8. So yes, you can have two, right? Like there's GCC native to the system that it needs, and then the GCC in user space that your users can use.
So after this is done installing, let's take a look at what GCC toolset 10 gave us. Because there are a couple of packages like Python where we allow you to have multiple application streams installed in parallel because of reasons.
Right.
So let's do RPMQL 10. All right, so that's really not that helpful. All right, so this one is probably more what we want to look at.
Did you mean to do Q-L?
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I would have figured it out after it aired.
Yeah. I was like, ooh, what's that?
Okay, so that's docs. Okay, so you can see that what it's doing to allow you to keep it separate is it's shoved it into a versioned directory in opt to help keep it separate from the other stuff. Let me see if I have other stuff installed here. All right, so
there's I see a GCC 8 at the top, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And this is the GCC C++ that is the system provided one that's 8.3.
Mm-hmm.
So the way that they keep it separate is by shoving it in this other directory. Similar to how we allow you to have both Python 2.7 and Python 3.4.
6 or 4 or whatever.
Actually, there's a couple versions of Python 3 now.
Yeah.
But yeah. So yeah. Most application streams, there can be only one, but there are a couple of exceptions where you can have more than one.
Right.
And you fall into a terrible abyss of sorrow when you decide that that's the route that you want to go.
Yes.
So JP Date says you got to tell what system which version to use. Yes. So for things like Python, we still use the alternatives utility for doing that. So you can say that if somebody just uses sharp bang user bin Python, it really goes to Python 2.7 or it really goes to Python 3.4. I don't think GCC Toolkit is included in alternatives. I could be wrong. I've not looked at it, but I know that things like Python have that, so you can set what the system unversioned version of the thing is.
Which makes you wonder why 8 is installed. There's got to be
that's
some
the one
reason
that we
for
had
that.
2 years ago.
Right. Yeah, there you
when
go.
RHEL was released.
Makes sense to me. Okay.
Yeah, and this is one of the things where like RHEL's trying to be more adaptive over time, because in RHEL 6 world, right, whatever was GCC when RHEL 6 was released, that's what you had for 10 years. And you didn't get anything else. You just got that one.
Yeah.
And with RHEL 7, we introduced software collections, and in RHEL 8, I think we did a little better with application streams, because it simplifies it to mostly have only one thing on the system.
Mostly, yes, that's the key word.
Well, rules are made to be
There's
broken.
no such thing as
short.
perfection. Okay, I get it. Especially with Python, the 2.7, the 3.6, whatever.
Right. Well, like Ansible uses 2.7, and so we needed to carry it for that reason. Most other things, like the Red Hat utilities that are Python based, those had already been updated to Python 3 by and large. So the 2.7 was included to support some of the other layered products that were still using the older version of Python.
Mm-hmm. And Scott McCarty just got back to me. He says, right now, none of the databases are available directly in UBI 8. That said, when RHEL 8.4 comes out, we're probably going to add Redis no matter what. So there's the answer to that one for you. I believe that was Detective Conan that was asking about that. And then, yes, you have to specify what, in the user space, what version of whatever you're using to use. So can we get MariaDB and PostgreSQL too? Maybe. When is the 8.4 GA? JP Date is asking.
Let's take a look at the container catalog.
Yeah. Next May? I don't think it's that far off, is it?
What?
8.4.
It is in the spring this year, yes.
Okay. This year, yeah, not 2021, not 2022.
Correct. Because we've gone to the 6-month minor release.
Mm-hmm.
So in the spring we do a minor, and in the fall we do a minor.
Right.
And then we do have a 3-year major. So next year, right, 2022 spring,
right,
RHEL 9. So buckle up.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Yep. There we go.
No Postgres.
Yep. Somebody was asking about updates.
RHEL 9. Ugh, we aren't off 6 yet. Ouch. Sorry, dude. But, I mean, this is the nature of the industry we're in, right? It's going to get faster as time goes on. It doesn't stay at the same pace. It's always increasing pace as we evolve, increase time, right? So it's almost like an exponent at that point. Time goes on, technology changes go up faster and faster and faster. So
There's also some benefits to going faster, right? Like,
yeah,
there's a huge difference between 6 and 7,
you're right.
and there's a pretty big difference between 7 and 8.
Yes,
But by shortening the release cadence of 9, there's not going to be a tremendous gulf between 8 and 9. So things like the in-place upgrade utility
hmm
we currently have for 7 to 8 becomes less challenging going from 8 to 9, and then
right.
less challenging going from 9 to 10 as we move through the faster release cadence.
Right. The idea is things do get easier as we evolve, right?
Right. And
In general. Not
hopefully,
always the case. Yeah.
hopefully, that's the intent anyway.
Right. We try. We really try.
Right. And the same thing with the minor releases of RHEL. So there was a point in time where like we would maybe do a minor release every year to 18 months. And sometimes we'd like hold back the minor release, even though it was mostly ready, because we wanted to get a hardware manufacturer, kernel module enablement or something in there. And so we'd hold it until it's ready to try and pick that up. And now with RHEL 8, when we went to the predictable release cadence, it's like, look, we know it's the spring. So if your thing's not ready by the spring, then we'll pick it up in the fall. And generally that distance is not so far that it's that it causes problems. So, all right.
All
well,
right.
we are well over time. So
Yes.
thank you all
I'm getting
for
a
hanging out.
clarification from Scott on the other databases, Conan. So I'll get back to you on that as soon as he does. Yeah, great show today, Scott. Like very informative. Lots of diving in. Narendev now knows that lab.redhat.coms exists. I said that like a Midwesterner. I'm sorry. Anything else you want to say before we jump off the air here?
No, thanks everybody for tuning today. I have no idea who's going to be coming in 2 weeks, but I'll continue to bring the heat like
There you
we've done
go.
every couple of weeks. And yeah, if I was really talented, I'd actually figure out a schedule more than half a week in advance. But I'm not that talented.
Well, we only ask for so much.
Right. Eventually, I'll get there. I actually was feeling really good at the end of last year. I had like 2 or 3 shows lined up, but yeah, I got to get back on that.
Yeah, last year's over.
I'm having a 2020 hangover.
Yeah,
It is what
no
it is.
kidding. That is a thing. All right. Okay. Yeah. So thank you everyone for joining. This is the last show of the day for the channel, but tomorrow we've got all kinds of funness going on. We have OpenShift Container Storage Office Hours. We'll be talking about multi-cloud object gateways, free developer sandbox for OpenShift. We have a special show about that. Then there is an entire OpenShift Commons gathering on data science. We're only going to be able to cover the first few hours of that, and then we're jumping over to the GitHub or GitOps happy hour. So all that will be on the calendar. I'm trying to figure out. Diane sent me 2 different links to the data science one, so I'm trying to figure out which link to go to, and I'll get that updated today, hopefully. So check out the calendar. I'll drop a link to that in chat, and stay in the know. We'll see you tomorrow, folks. Appreciate all your time today. Thank you.
Everybody.